Joseph, how you doing, man?
Out freaking standing. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. So John said you started an F class and now you're in PRS. So why don't we just jump right in and talk about that?
Sure. I don't know if John told you, but I'm prior military. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and the style of shooting you do in qualification is very similar to F class shooting. It's sit, kneel, stand, prone type shooting. But what was similar about it was like at the 600 yards, you shot all prone, but it was on a scoring system. I mean, all the shots you took were on scoring, and the it was a 10 ring target at 600 yards, and I was really good at it. In my entire Marine Corps career, I never missed a shot at 600, and that was open sights. Now they're using ACOGs, so I give the young Marines now crap about it because they're using ACOGs and we didn't get those. We were still using iron sights. But that's kind of what piqued my interest in competition shooting. And at the time, the only competition shooting I knew about was at CMP. So when I went down there, met a guy named John. I don't want to say his last name because I don't know what kind of things he's doing these days. But John, everyone knows him, the PRS. But he was the range officer at CMP the day I was there shooting a match. My second match I shot, I only dropped about, I think it was two shots out of the 10 ring, but they DQ'd me because I used two different rifles. The extractor claw in my RPR broke. I was able to shoot the gun, but on single feed, and it would not retract the bullet. I'd have to tip the rifle up and drop it down. The RO didn't like that, so I picked up John's gun. John let me borrow his gun, and I completed the match. And I mean, the score wise, I had the best score, but they DQ'd me and wouldn't give it to me because I used two different guns. Um, the 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 F class that we shot was not they're not sanctioned events. I'm not like you. I mean, you shoot the good stuff. I mean, everyone's heard of you. I mean, you're shooting the real targets and the real competitions. But these are more of the down home country boys out there shooting at the CMP. If you've ever been to a CMP, you know they're nice. So that's what we were shooting. Nothing sanctioned.
The good stuff, huh?
Hmm.
I got the good stuff.
But you got
uh,
something special. I can promise you that.
so how do you go from shooting kind of informal F class, which is into PRS? How do you make that transition?
So there's another guy that I met at my first F class match. His name's Shad. He's with Heart Barrels now. I mean, he if you ever go to an F class, I'm sorry, if you ever go to a PRS match, you'll see Shad. He's always got barrels from Heart, and I shoot Heart as well. But I met him, and if you know Shad, Shad doesn't make a lot of friends just at the time because his personality just wasn't there. But now he's got a best personality in the world. But anyway, so I meet this guy named Shad, okay, and we become best friends, and he tells me about this PRS stuff. So I look it up on my way home. And I remember your interview with John. He mentioned about it. I see this PRS match on YouTube, and I'm watching it, and I see John. He's there with a guy named Jason, and Jason is his AM. And you can look up the video still on YouTube now, and you can look it up. He's doing all the things that we do now for the PRS. It's at K&M. It's been at K&M since I've been shooting it, and just slightly before. Excuse me, excuse me. And so I see him shooting. It's like I got to try this. This looks like fun. And and Shad's like, you got to come do it. Let's do it. And I said, Shad, but we got to stay with F class because we got to keep up our discipline. And he said, yeah, man, we're going to keep shooting F class. I think since I started shooting PRS, I've shot one F class match. And anyways, I shoot a few matches. It wasn't my first. The Gap Grind wasn't my first match. I had shot one match in at Alabama Precision. It was a 2 day match. I had shot a 1 day match. Actually, my 5 year anniversary for my first match is coming up in June. And so I went and shot a 2 day match at Alabama. And funny thing is they were doing a raffle for the prize table, and Shad wanted an action or a chassis, and he's all the chassis and actions were gone. He handed me all of his tickets and said, "Man, have fun. I'm out of here." So he gets up before he gets to the truck. His one of his numbers gets called, and I get a magneto speed. And I walked away with over $3,000 in prizes off the tickets that he gave me. And
Wow.
he kicks me every time he sees me, and we always get a hoot out of that. But so a few months go by, and I'm at register for the gap grind. I go shoot it, and I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off. I feel bad for my pro. He did the best he could. He did an awesome job. So I see the the cameras, and I was like, oh, I know that. So I went and said, hey, where's John? He said, he's over down there at the 1200. I said, he's the reason I'm here. And he said he would love to hear that. So I was like, well, tell me where's that. So I go down there, and I get to him, and I'm talking to him. It's like, John, John, John. He's like, yeah, yeah, what's up, buddy? He's like, dude, you are the reason I'm here. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this sport right now. He's like, man, I love to hear that. I love that. And he said, do you mind if we do an interview with you? I said, absolutely. So they got the shooting USA cameras over here, and I feel bad for my pro because he was an SF, or I think they're called SF. I don't know what they're calling now, the Marine Corps recon. He's a ammo technician or disposal in the Marine Corps, and he was attached to a recon battalion. And I didn't even ask him if we could do this because at that time I didn't understand. Those guys want to know if they're going to be on camera. So
Yeah.
we do the shoot, and I've got the video and everything. It's really awesome. I had so much fun. I did a nice little interview afterwards, and then I met John. Finally, I'd talked to him, and then I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but my next match was on my birthday. It was at K&M, and he came and shot with me and got on my squad, and we shot, and then we kind of take that story a little further. And he said, "So, who's your AM this year?" And I said, uh, "I'm the AM this year." He said, "You ain't no AM." I said, "What? Have you seen me shoot?" He said, "That ain't an AM gun, and you ain't no AM." It's like, fine. And he's like, this can go one of two ways. It can go, hey, here's Joey Hargrave, who got better. Now he's got an AM, and he's taking another AM on, and he's teaching this AM how to shoot. Or it can go like this: Joey still sucks as a shooter, and now he's an AM again. And so I picked the other side. I went to Shannon. I
Professional
told Shannon
am. You can be.
exactly. So I told so I was slated to shoot with Shad as my pro, and I went to Shannon and I said, hey, I'm going to shoot as a pro this year. He's like, are you shooting good? I said no, but John Scouten over here is freaking bullying me into being a pro, and I'll be honest with you, it's probably the best decision I made. My AM that year and is he actually so the story that John told you about the tie at the finale with Jeff and Austin. Jeff was my AM as my first year as a pro,
Wow.
and then he goes on he drops that one shot. He missed the championship, and I tell everybody that, and every chance I get, and he's around, I remind him that he was my AM. Now, truth be told, he had no business being an AM. He was an amazing shooter at that time. He hindsight's 2020. He probably shouldn't have been an AM, but he didn't do it maliciously. There's people out there who will sandbag just to get that trophy, but I know Jeff, and he wouldn't have done it on purpose. Just that's the way that the cards fell for him, and he's an amazing shooter, and I had a privilege of shooting with him. So, but I mean,
Explain how that works.
what's that?
Can you explain how that works, just for those that don't understand what that match is like, the pro am?
So, so the gap grind, I'll tell you. People ask me, what's your favorite match? I said, if I only shoot one match in my entire season, 1 2 day, it'll be the gap grind. Um, it's an opportunity to give back. It's an opportunity to teach younger shooters. But the way that works is you can go one of two ways. Well, let's start about the qualification part first. Um, excuse me. So to be classified as an AM, you have to meet a certain criteria or fall short of a certain criteria, if you will. Um, First of all, on your 1 day scores, if you meet any of these criteria that I'm about to tell you, you are considered a pro. Um, your 1 day scores. If you have a 75% or an average of 75% or less on your 1 day scores, your last three, I believe, you are considered an AM. I'm sorry, considered 75% or better, you're considered a pro. On the 2 day scores, or if you have your last three 2 day scores, you are considered a pro if you score 50% or better on an average. Can you do not count your previous gap grind score if you're an AM, or if you are a sponsored shooter. The only exception on the sponsored shooter side is for juniors and seniors. You just got to get with the director, whoever's holding the match, and get permission to be an AM as a sponsored shooter. But that only applies to juniors and seniors on the PRS. But the match itself, I tell everybody and that I've ever shot with is I can do anything I want, anything you need me to do, but squeeze the trigger. You want me to carry your bag? I'll carry your bag. Move your gun? I'll move your gun. Whatever it takes to make you have a good time, hit the steel, and go away with a smile on your face. Forget about the trophies. Just have fun. Shut up and shoot. Let's do it. And that mentality, I always tell my shooters, I tell them, I say, I got two rules. Number one rule is to have fun. If you're not having fun, pack it up. Let's go home. Okay? Because there's worse things in life than shooting steel. All right? Number two is every wind call I give you will be of center. If I say 2/10, it's 2/10 of center, left or right. If I say a mil, it's left or right of center. Never the left edge, never the right edge. It's always of center. The only exception is a mover.
So how do you call the mover? What?
No, the mover is based on your. For me, it's based on your cartridge speed, how fast you're running, and the wind. If we've got a constant 2/10 wind or a 3/10 wind, we'll roll that into your scope, and then depending on your round and your speed, we would have found this out on a tune-up day, by the way. Like for me and the mover at 500 at K&M, it's 1.5 to 1.6 to the lead edge. If there's 2/10 of wind, we'll roll it in, and then we still hold the lead edge because it's easier to shoot a mover if you have your wind dialed in than trying to add and take away that wind while you're shooting a mover, especially for a new shooter like an AM.
Let's say there's, for simplicity, there's 3/10 of wind, and you don't roll it into the scope, and the lead is 1 mil. So one way you're gonna go 1.3 mils, and the other way you have to go 0.7, which
That's
gets
correct.
really confusing. Correct.
That's correct. It's very
So
difficult.
if you
It's
roll
very
the
confusing
if you
to
roll
that.
the 0.3, if you dial the 0.3 for the wind,
Hmm.
then you just hold 1 mil both directions
That's correct. That's
and
correct.
done.
That's what we do. That's what we teach, or that's what I teach. Some guys will. So a guy named Tracy Smith, he'll do a mover roll. So he'll dial like let's say the mover is a 1.5 hold. He'll dial 1.5 into his scope, and he'll shoot it all one direction, and then wait for it to come back and shoot it again, just holding straight up with no hold. I don't know if he does that when the wind is involved, but he's done that. I believe the boys out in Oklahoma do that as well. I have yet to try it. I'm too scared. I'm more interested in hitting the target, and I should try it sometime. It sounds like fun.
I've done it both ways, and my results have amazingly been exactly the same. I miss every time.
At least you're consistent.
Yep, that's who I am. No, I was taught to learn to dial the wind in and then just hold
Yeah.
the same both ways. But
Now, when I was
uh,
shooting, when I was
yeah,
shooting those F class matches, I would dial the wind. I wouldn't try holding, but I rarely ever dial wind in PRS. I always hold because for me, I would probably forget to take it out for the next stage.
yeah. Well, in F class, you have to do a combination. Uh, and again, it's mainly if you're shooting long range or if it's really windy. Uh, like at you know at the Southwest Nationals this year, it was really freaking windy. So even at 600, I had to dial wind into the
Yeah,
scope. 1,000 for sure, because if you didn't dial wind, uh, you'd be completely off the frame. You can't aim off the frame.
that's
So
correct.
I had to do a combination of dial in some wind and then hold the rest, and because you can't dial it fast enough. as fast as that wind was moving, you can't dial it fast enough. But I usually just dial enough that I can get close to center, and then I can just play, just hold quickly as I need to,
Yeah.
and uh, that's how I do it. That's
For
how
me,
most people do it, actually, in F class.
yeah, for me in PRS, it's easier for me to not dial because if I miss the target, I'm on scope. I'm watching my impact. I'm watching my miss. And say I'm 2/10 off the right side, or we'll say 4/10 off the right side. The target's a mil wide, so there's half a mil plus the 4/10. That's 9/10. 9/10 of center is an impact. Um, that's easier to do than to try to dial that. Now, there's a place up in just south in South Kentucky that you go there and you find out the wind is 3/10. It's going to be 3/10 all day. So it's a very consistent
Hmm.
wind. Then that may be a dial, and just leave it alone until you start to see your bullet walk. But there's no reason for me, anyways, on an to dial wind, especially if I'm going to be shooting a 500-yard target now and then a 700-yard target next, and I already know that I'm 4/10 off the right. Well, I can carry that depending on the distance of the next target.
Yeah, when I started shooting PRS, I would always dial because I didn't know how to see in F class. I always use the center dot to aim,
Hmm.
always. And what I do is I aim on target on the rings. That's how I aim. So I was always using the center dot. Well, PRS now I had to use the horizontal crosshair with the
Yeah.
hash marks,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And I found it really hard to do that. So I would just dial it in and then shoot. And if I missed to the right, I just move left, and I would aim on target. I would aim, center, left edge, off. I would always use the center dot on the crosshair. So then I had to teach myself. I found out that, hey, you're doing this the hard way. So then I had to learn. I had to teach myself how to look away from center and start using the hash marks. And I finally got used to doing it that way. But
Yeah.
it's amazing what you're used to, and then it's really hard to break that habit. And for me, I had to go from one to the other. When I was shooting PRS, I had to break away from center and use the hash marks. And then when I go back to F class, I had to be glued to center, and then
Hmm.
always use center, and then use the lines on the target. So
Yeah.
uh, and
And
and switching back and forth, I can't do. In F class, some guys actually use the center dot,
yeah.
and then if the wind gets really strong, they start using the hash marks on the scope in combination with the. Yeah, again, I can't even explain it because it's so freaking hard. I can't. I would get totally lost and just because all it takes in F class, all it takes is one mistake, and you're pretty much done. It's
Yeah.
going to be hard to recover from that.
I think it's similar in the PRS. I think um, on a 2 day, you can have one bad stage. And I don't mean tanking stage, like zero. I mean, there's guys out there. You go ask them, "How you shooting? How you shooting?" They say, "I'm not shooting great." And you find out they dropped six for the match. You know, their definition of a bad stage and my definition of bad stage are not the same. Um, you ask Chad Heckler how he's shooting, he's going to say, "Man, I'm doing okay." And then you watch him walk across the stage with a $5,000 check and a freaking first place trophy. It's like I wish
I
I
would
shot
say
that bad.
that's doing okay. I would say
But
that no, I would say he's right. He's doing okay.
but I think depending on your definition of bad stages, I think you can allow your not allow yourself, but I think you can have one bad stage in the PRS and still podium or at least top 10. On a 1 day, I think you got to pretty much stay on cue for the whole match. I mean, you can't average more than 2 to 3 shots drop per stage if you're gonna win the match. Because if you drop one shot a stage, you're down 10 points. The match I shot last weekend, the winner dropped 12. I'm sorry, 14. Okay, the same match last year. That's
Hmm.
this trophy right here, the second place one. I don't know which one it is. I dropped 12, and Robert Brantley dropped 11, and he dropped one on the skill stage, and so did I. And I had, and coming up to that point, I hadn't dropped
Mm.
anything on the skill stage in probably almost a year. And he beat me. I would have beat him on the tiebreaker because my time was quicker. No, I'm sorry, my time wasn't quicker. He dropped one and I dropped one, and that's just the way it goes. If I had hit that shot, I would have won the match on a tiebreaker because he dropped a shot. But you can't average 2 3 shots a stage in PRS in a 1 day. You gotta hit those shots. Like I said, if you drop one a stage, then you're down 10. And matches these days of 1 days. I mean, we all saw what Ben Gossett did uh, at the Armageddon Cup on a one on the final day. He cleaned the freaking day, And in the 1 days, you got Jeff Gurry dropping three in a match, tying for first with another guy dropping three. So single digit drops are not rare in a 1 day match, but in a 2 day match, I would say that's pretty rare to see somebody drop less than 10 on a 2 day. But you know, you depending on the competition that shows up and depending on the environment, I think you can get away with maybe one poor stage, depending on your definition of poor. But on 1 day, you pretty much got to stick with it on cue the whole day.
Yeah, it's getting tough. I mean, uh, it's like any other sport, right? You everybody tries to win. I always tell people that everybody's selfish. They always want to win, and they're gonna try and they're gonna train and they're gonna. I don't know what's worse. I think what's worse is when you get really close to winning and you don't win, because I
Hmm.
think that really pushes you
Oh
because
yeah,
you're within striking distance,
yeah, and
and then these guys just train, and get better, and then as they get better, they start leaving everybody behind, and then the others go, well, I'm not gonna. If he can do it, I can do it, and then they get better, and just so on and so forth.
Herm Edwards once said, "You play to win the game. You play to win the game." And if you're not showing up, if you, you know, I tell people there's probably three types of people that shoot PRS. There's the competitors, there's the fans, and there's the people who pay money to hang out with their friends. And every single one of them are justified in being there, and every single one of them are welcome to be there. But I go to matches to compete and have a good time, but I'm not going to let it cloud my chance to see people and have a good time. I think that some people can compete to the point where they drive people away. And you look at people who blow up at stages and they cuss and they scream and they throw things. And I was guilty. I did that at the finale, and it hurt. It hurt a lot because I like to think that when people think of Joey, they think of the nice guy, the guy who's there to help, and the guy who wants to be around people. And I didn't show that on that stage, and I felt bad about it. I really did. But I felt like at that moment that my level of competing, not necessarily my ability to compete or my ability to shoot, but what I was trying to do clouded the reason I was there. And my reason for being there is to have a good time and see people and try to compete at the same time.
So why did you blow up?
So what happened? Here's basically what happened was I was shooting a stage. It was the truck stage. It was, I believe it was stage four of the day. I was by a small stretch of the imagination, I was still competing to win the match at that time. Um, little did I know later that's just not the case. But that stage, I get up there and I get in the back of the truck and I'm shooting, and I called out. I said, "Hey, what target am I on?" And I didn't hear anything. What target am I on? I didn't hear anything, so I sent it and I hit the target. They said, "Wrong target, next target." And I was upset. So I finished out that. I got out of the back of the truck, got to the front of the truck, and I don't remember if I cleaned it or I dropped one or two on the front, but it was over, and I punched the top of the truck about 3 or 4 times, said some things that would embarrass my mother, and turned around and yelled at my squad, and I walked off. And John Kyle, when I was coming back, John Kyle met me at my squad, and he put his arm around me. He walked me down the hill, and he talked for a minute. I cooled off, and Cody came over, and Andy Lewis came over, and they said, "Hey, look, probably justified in being upset, but maybe not the right thing to do." And so we talked for a little bit. I calmed down, and I went back to my squad and I shook everybody's hand. I said, "I'm sorry. I did not mean to talk to you guys that way. That is on me. You are not responsible for my shots. I am. So I apologize for the way I talked to you guys." And we moved on. Shook everybody's hand. We got day two. I brought biscuits for everybody, butter them up a little bit. We went on and had a good time.
So, what was the result of that stage? How many points did you drop?
I want to say I dropped four or five shots, and it was a 10 round stage. So that's in my mind. The reason I was frustrated is because you work so hard to get to that point, and for someone in the moment it was for someone to take it away from me. I was upset, but later it was childish to think that way. It was still my fault. I missed the shots; they didn't. If I had hit them and I paid attention to what I'm doing, then I'd been fine. And I tried to place blame on them, and it wasn't their fault. It was me. And there's four or five shots that I can't get back. I mean, I ended up doing pretty well on day two, but not enough to get back in it. Um, but that's just the way it goes. And we talked a moment ago about having a bad stage. There's the one that I couldn't afford to have because you can have a bad stage, but you got to hope everybody else has that same bad stage. That stage in particular, good shooters aren't going to miss. If they are, they're going to drop one or two. But you cannot, if you can afford a bad stage in a match, it can't be an easy stage. It's got to be a difficult stage, and hope that the better shooters, if there are better than you, are going to have that same difficult stage. Going through a match and dropping five on the skill stage, well, you can hang it up because the winner's not going to drop five on the skill stage. Um, you just can't. You can't. Your bad stage that I'm referring to cannot be an easy stage. And when I say easy, easy in relative to speaking to the other stage you're going to shoot. There's a difficulty level to all of them, and that one cannot be the easy one.
Makes sense. Now, how does that? How does that in PRS? How does that work? Uh,
So,
is your squad allowed to coach you?
so no, basically, they okay. So if I'm on the line, I'm shooting right, and you're back there on glass. So up until COVID, on a 2 day match, we had two ROs for every stage. One called shots and one to score. And then as the shooters, we just walked to the stage and shot the stage. Okay. Now after COVID, and what COVID brought to the table was the lack of people coming to the matches because of COVID reasons. So we had the Collis match during COVID, and everything was done by the shooters. There were no ROs at the match. They were all shooter ROs, and it's basically similar to the way a 1 day is run. 1 day of run, you've got a traveling RO, so they keep score and they manage the squad, and the squad calls shots. And basically now there's usually at least one RO per stage, and that person's there to manage the squad, manage the stage, and then but the shooters are calling the shots. And people say, well, Joey's going to call shots for the 18 guys. He's going to give them impacts. Well, there's some integrity things in place. So if I'm on a squad with another 18 shooter, and we'll say Lee Stevens and I are on the same squad, right? And I'm watching his shots. Well, I'm going to have another person, a non 18 member, on glass either next to me or somewhere where they can see, to validate and verify everything I do. Or I'll have him call the shots and I'll verify and validate everything he does. It just keeps the honest man honest. So the shooters from the squad will call the shots, and then the RO itself, and this is a 2 day, the RO who's been dedicated to that stage by the match director, they'll keep the score in the book. And if there's any discrepancies on a shot or something, it'll be discussed, and then the RO will make a decision on the shot after talking to everybody in the squad. But for the most part, we don't have a lot of issues because if I'm willing to cheat and give you a score, well, first of all, and second of all, someone else could get away with it too. And I don't want to call a miss on you, and then your guy come up and call a miss on me. So I mean, there's one way to look at it, but I don't have an integrity issue, so I'm going to call them as I see them.
So you have an RO now keeping
Hmm.
score, and then one member of the squad is going to be on glass.
For you, yes. So it's not always the same person calling shots. So it'll rotate in and out. Shannon K made a statement kind of goes well. That is, hey, if you rode the guy that's shooting, you rode the guy that you're shooting with, that's shooting, or if you're on the same shooting team, you know, don't be primary RO for that guy shooting, and let somebody else call the shots. Feel free to be on glass and watch the shots, but let somebody who's not buddy buddy with them and not on the shooting team with them call the shots. It makes for bad optics. And so yeah, you'll have
Yeah,
somebody in the
yeah,
squad up
I
there
agree.
shooting, and the next stage, maybe you shoot, maybe you're going to call shots for as many people as you can, and then when you're two or three away from it's your turn to shoot, somebody else will jump on glass and you'll go and get ready and come up and shoot, and I'll call your shots, and then Devin will call them next stage or something. Everybody gets a chance, and newer shooters tend to shy away from calling shots just because, well, one, they've never done it before, and two, they just don't want to be the guy who makes a bad call, which I've done, and I believe like my second matchup at K&M, I cost Brian Allen a clean day of shooting because I did not call two shots on the long range. Brian Allen, 18
No,
Precision. He's the gunsmith. He's actually the owner of 18 Precision. He's one of the greatest shooters I've ever had the pleasure to shoot with, and it's an honor to call him my friend. So we were shooting a one day, and I jumped on glass. I said, "Hey, I've shot a few matches. I could do this." And I'm watching, and he's drilling the freaking plates. He gets, I believe it was the 900-yard target. I didn't call it, and he turns, and if you've never met Brian Allen, when he gets upset, that was an impact. And I didn't call it. Did it again. I didn't call it. And somebody else jumped on glass with me real quick, and he started calling, and he dropped those two shots right there. I mean, he was upset, and rightfully so. But in true Brian Allen fashion, I didn't call him, and he wasn't allowed. He was not going to allow the score to be changed. Even though there were some shooters like, "Hey, we know those are hits, Brian. We'll go ahead and give them to me." He wouldn't allow it because that's not Brian. Brian is a straight up guy. So a few stages later, we were in the shoot house, and he looks at me and said, "You gonna call this one?" I said, "Nope, no, I'm not calling another one." He said, "No, let's do it together." And he would call the impacts, and then he'd ask me, something like, was that an impact? Or was that a miss, whatever? And he'd call or whatever. And so he took the opportunity to teach me what to look for, especially with a round like the Dasher. You drill the center of a target with Dasher and a long range target, it's not going to move a lot. You got to know what you're looking for. And I learned a lot that day. And
so let's talk about that right quick because you didn't call the impacts, but there was a lot of people that, or I don't know if a lot, but there was some people that said, yeah, he did hit him. How does that work in the the discussion? How does that go on, and who's allowed to change and who's not allowed to change
so
the
on a
score?
1 day match, it's like soccer. It's a friendly match. So there's kind of a unspoken, maybe there's a spoken rule, but I don't know if there's actually in writing in the PRS manual. But if you've shot three or more match or more than three matches, you are no longer considered a new shooter. So therefore, you will not get very much coaching on the clock. Newer shooters, which are the three or less guys, and when I'm ROing, I typically RO at the Alabama matches. I tell them, I say, guys, we're going to let you miss a few before we start helping you. Because if you get up here and you start, running them off and you're hitting targets and it's your first match, we're not going to help you on the clock because obviously you don't need the help. So we, if you're a new shooter and you're struggling, we get on there. We'll call wind for you and everything. What happened in that instance with Brian Allen? I was the only one on the glass, so there was nobody to verify what I had seen or validate what I had seen. So in today's shooting, there's usually one or two people on glass. So if I say impact and you're like, dude, that wasn't an impact. Well, you're not going to say anything out loud on the clock while the person is shooting unless it's a hit to move on stage. Okay. If it's a hit and move on stage, we have to correct it right now, because if it truly was a miss and he continues to shoot, well, there's no correcting that because he has to go back and shoot the whole stage over. But if it's a hit or miss move on stage, I can call an impact by mistake, and the shooter can continue to shoot, and then we can correct it after the clock is over. On a 1 day, that's a discussion we have with the primary caller. Hey, what'd you see? And we talk to the guy who says it wasn't an impact. What'd you see? We take the shooter's opinion, and of course, because I like to think that every shooter has some level of integrity. I mean, hell, this last match, the RO called an impact for me, and I clearly saw the miss, and I came off it, and I got a 2 on the stage. And I turned around and said, "Hey, that last hit, it was a miss. It came off the left side." Are you sure? I said, "Yeah, I'm right behind the bullet. I saw it. It came off the left side." So instead of a 3, I got a 2. And that's a 2, not a drop 2. That's a 2. It was not a good match for me.
Thanks for the clarification.
So, so
Just to be sure.
so I did the same thing next stage, just in case anybody's wondering. But it was a moment where if I hadn't said anything, they would have probably discussed it and came away with an opinion and put forth a ruling, if you will. It's harder to do that during a 2 day because it's a national level match. Um, it's the on a 2 day match, it's pretty much what the call was made at the time. There's got to be some extenuating circumstances to get it changed, because at that point you have to reshoot the stage, and reshoots in the PRS
Mm.
have bad mojo attached to them. I never want to. I never
Really?
want to win a match that I had to reshoot a stage. If I'm going head to head with a guy.
Oh, explain that, because ex- explain that to me, because that makes no
All right, so
sense.
so let me.
Okay. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. Well, let me tell you what I'm thinking before. What I'm thinking is, if it's a reshoot, that means there was enough evidence or lack thereof to know that that was not a clear. The score that you have was not a clear indication of what you could have done, and maybe something prevented you outside of your
Yes,
control from
and
getting your
that's and
score,
that's the way it
right?
is now.
So why are reshoots frowned
So
upon?
a reshoot in the rules, a reshoot can be awarded if something happened on your control, like you said. Let's say the stage broke, like a prop broke. Okay, beyond your control, a position was no longer available to you for something like a I don't know, something broke and it fell over and you can't use the prop anymore. All right, that warrants a reshoot. Probably if that cannot be repaired, it might actually be thrown out depending on how many people have shot the stage. Um, if a distance is incorrect and was later discovered, um, if you're the first squad shooting the stage, say 5 people have already shot the stage, and someone checked the distance and it was supposed to be 450 and it was only 400 in the book and no one caught it, well, those 5 people can reshoot the stage. The match director will allow that to happen because that goes beyond the threshold of plus or minus a certain percentage for the target distance. Okay, if the target falls while you're shooting in the act of shooting, then that warrants a reshoot. If there's a safety reason, I shot the Alabama match a few years back. It was raining. I couldn't see the last target. I literally could not see the target. It was raining so bad. And I stopped, called ceasefire on myself, turned around to the RO. And RO says, "Well, I've got you for an 8." And I said, "No, sir." Called Jim. Jim came over, explained to him what happened. He said, "All right, you reshoot it when it clears up." Not clears up, but clears up enough that I can see the target. So that warranted a reshoot. So I reshot the stage. And I say I never want to win a match based on a reshoot because that was prior to the actual writing of the law, writing of the rule. Um, and it's kind of a thing in my mind. It's just a stigmatism because, everyone shoots the stage and then Joey gets to reshoot it for whatever reason because nobody's there to hear the whole truth on why the stage broke or why I got to reshoot. All they know is what their buddy told them. The last thing I want to have happen is I go shoot the stage over again, get a 10 instead of the 7 that I got because of a valid reshoot. Or I'm sorry, My original score was a 7. I'm gifted a reshoot for valid reasons. Well, the general public only hears what their buddy tells them, and that's the last thing I want to hear is you won on a reshoot. Well, yeah, but it was warranted, and you'll never convince anybody that it was warranted. You'll just convince the people that you know, if that makes sense at all. So I go back
Yeah.
to I don't want to
Oh yeah.
win.
Yeah.
I don't
No, it
want to
makes
win
sense.
a match on a reshoot. I never want to do that. I want it to go flawlessly.
Um, you talked about
Yeah.
teams. How does that? How do teams work in
You mean
PRS?
like like the A team precision?
Well, you said
Yeah.
A team. Yeah, I don't know what that
Okay.
means. Is teams in PRS? I've
So
never.
back when PRS started, people just came out in flannels and blue jeans. I'm sure Shannon came out in something flannel with the blue jeans on or something like that. That's back when he had hair. They went and shot a match one day, and then somebody later on said, "Hey guys, we shoot a lot together. Let's get matching shirts and shoot some more." And they became a team. Okay, and then it progressed into sponsorships and stuff like that. So my performance and the way I shoot and how I do does not reflect on a team score whatsoever. Nobody's out there for officially taking score of how the A team's doing versus how GCP's doing versus how K and M Team K and M's doing. We just function as a team. We shoot together, we squad together. Brian Allen is the gunsmith, and he helps us out with our chambering. If we represent him while we're shooting. So from a team, the word team, I wouldn't say it's a team in the sports world style team. It's more of a team of guys who just like to shoot the same stuff, and they get together and they wear matching outfits and run around and shoot targets. Yeah.
Okay, I see. So, so you guys are all allowed to squat together?
Yes. So when the so you sign up for the match, and then squatting opens. So we can all squat together if we wanted to. Like I squat a lot with the GCP guys just because we're good friends. But I know that a team, I've got my guys that I can shoot with. Now it kind of goes back to when we talked about calling shots. It would not look good if there were 10, 18 guys on one squad. That would probably not go over well with the match director, and they would probably ask that some of us open up some spots for some other guys so we can keep the honest man honest. Bad optics, like we said before. But we've never had that issue. We've never filled an entire squad with all A team guys. The team MPA's never filled an entire squad with MPA guys. It just, if you see that, it just doesn't look good. So you try to avoid doing that.
Okay, I got it. Makes sense. So, so what changes would you like to see in PRS, if any?
Well, I don't know. Probably not going to make too many people happy with this one, but I one thing that I've always said was the production rifle, the production class. Um, its goal is to allow you to shoot PRS at a lower price point. Okay, and you're welcome to shoot that PRS rifle all you want. But I've always, me personally, and I know other people think the same way, and I'm not saying the way it is wrong. It's just my opinion. I think the production class should be open to only people who are newer shooters. And once you've achieved production level trophy, X amount of times, I think that you can continue to shoot your rifle. That's a production class rifle, no issues there. But I think that you should no longer be able to win a trophy after X amount of trophies at podiums with that production rifle. I've always viewed production class as an entry level class to allow newer shooters the opportunity to a lower price point, get better, and then kind of upgrade that gun and move forward, move higher and higher. Matt Allwine will take a slingshot and a toilet paper roll and beat half the field with a lever action 30-30. So it's not the gun that makes you a better shooter. You're just a better shooter because you become better. I just always viewed the production level as an entry level, not a career move.
So what you're saying is it should be something like the
Yeah,
amateur
I think
status,
that's
right?
probably a good
Like
way to look at it.
at some point you can't you can shoot a production rifle, but you are no longer in production class. Now you're in
That's
open
correct.
class.
I would like to see that happen. I know what's his name, the guy where he's like 7,000 Bianchi cups, Doug Koenig. Koenig, I think I'm saying that right. Yeah, Doug.
Doug,
Doug's probably not liking
yeah.
me saying this.
Doug,
I
yeah.
want to start saying Doug's an amazing dude and he's a phenomenal shooter. But I know that's probably not popular for him. Popular opinion for him.
Not, not safe.
I've shot with Doug and he knows he knows I don't like him. No, I'm kidding. No, he knows. I think we've actually had this conversation, I believe. Um, but no, Doug's great. He's awesome. He's a great shooter. I fear the day that he becomes as proficient with a rifle that he is with a pistol because nobody's safe at that point. But I know my opinion about production would not sit well with him. But that's just my opinion. Doesn't make it right or wrong. Just what I think.
So here's a question: the first match
Hmm.
that he shot, was he still considered
No,
an amateur?
not in. All right.
How
So
does the
there's
PRS
so
rules work?
from a gap perspective, it is he would not be considered an amateur. From a that well,
Because he's
not only
sponsored.
that, but from a PRS classification, he is an amateur on his first match, and that's because there are two different styles of classifications, and they're independent of each other. From a gap grind perspective, he is not considered an AM, yes, because he's sponsored by Ruger. Hornady, I believe he's sponsored by Hornady, I'm not sure. Um, but he is not considered an AM from the gap grind perspective because he's a proficient in another discipline. Like you, if I brought you to gap grind as my AM, they'd laugh me out of that place, okay, because you're a proficient in the F class. So my buddy Shad, we talked about earlier, he was going to have Jack Hart or Jack Sutton, who was the former owner of Hart Rifle Barrels. He was going to bring him up as his amateur. Well, little did we know, or we knew very shortly after he made that comment, was Jack's an 8-time world champion in the freaking bench rest. And the thought is, if you are proficient
Mm.
in PR or I'm sorry, F class or bench rest or pistol, you know how to operate a gun. I put you on a barricade for about 2 weeks. We're going to make you a top level shooter because your mind knows how to shoot. Okay, where you're gonna figure it out. I'm talking about 2 weeks, 3 weeks grinding, figuring it out. You're gonna figure it out. I mean, you're a Southwest
Yeah, yeah,
champion.
yeah. No, yeah, I get it. I get it. It makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. When I first started shooting PRS, and again, my intention was never to do it, you know, hardcore. It was mainly just a relief valve for me to go. Just let me go see. Let me go play around with something different, and it's a lot of fun. And I wanted to keep it fun. But anyway, there was a match, and I forget what match it was, and it was something like a pro-am type of thing. And who was it? It was a match director, and I had never been there. And I said, "So what am I?" It was on Facebook, and he says, "Dude, you're a pro. You don't even think about it." And I didn't know how it worked, but I'm like, "I've never shot a PRS match," and he's like, "It doesn't matter." So anyway,
Yeah,
I don't disagree. That's the thing. I do not disagree, which kind of takes you back to the
yeah,
production class, right? It's like, okay, how can somebody, how can their reputation or their achievements or their background keep them from being an amateur, but somehow still keep them in a production class? But I guess the way I can justify it, or the way I see it, is one is limiting the shooter, the other one's limiting the equipment. And it doesn't matter who you are, how successful you are in the shooting sports, the it's
Hmm.
like a gas gun, right? It's gas gun is a gas gun. Same thing, production. I think production is production. As long as it meets the rules, you're just in production. Doesn't matter how good you are. And I get your point. Uh, However, some of these production guns that I've seen, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's
Well,
production. Holy crap,
The
that's pretty
GA
cool, pretty nice.
production rifle is, I believe, and George can correct me if I'm wrong, but the GA precision production rifle is made, chambered, and built by the same person who makes and chambers his, you know, $5,000 to $6,000 rifles. You know, the same machine that chambers his high end rifles is the same machine that chambers his production rifles.
Yeah, but I assume the
Oh yeah, I
components are
would assume
different.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
assume
The
the
like
components are different.
the action. Yeah,
I mean, the same stove that makes my pancakes also makes my ribeye
yeah.
steaks. You know,
Which I'm pretty sure they are both easy and
there's
good
a
food.
difference. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could argue this until the cows come home,
Yep.
but those are the rules, and as long as
Yeah,
you meet the rules,
like I said,
have
it doesn't
fun.
doesn't affect me
Just
shooting. It doesn't affect the way I shoot. I just that's always been my opinion on the production rifle side, and I'm pretty sure people who watch this are going to get mad at me and have something to say, and that's okay too, because you know it is my opinion.
so I'm
I am.
assuming you're
Yes,
an
yes,
open
sir.
shooter,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Uh,
Yeah. So let's talk about the classes. So they have, for those that don't know, they have production class, which is the rule is what is the rule in production
so
class? Do you
production
know?
now, I don't check the rules, but there's a dollar amount. I want to say that the total value of the rifle cannot exceed, I believe it's 4,000 maybe or thereabouts. That's scope and gun. Your scope MSRP, not what you bought it for, but your scope MSRP has a dollar value, and your rifle MSRP has a dollar value. That rifle has to be listed on the production website, on the manufacturer's website prior to shooting the match. You can't shoot the match and then call your gunsmith and tell them to list it as production. It's got to be listed as production prior to shooting the
Yeah,
match.
yeah.
So and you can change out the muzzle brake, but you can't change out the barrel. Barrel has to be changed out by the manufacturer in the caliber that's listed on the website. So you can't buy if the listing says six Creed, you can't buy a six Dasher from the same company if that Dasher is not available for a production rifle. If that makes sense. You can't change out the trigger.
Ah, okay.
You can't change out
Yes,
the
yes.
trigger. You can't change the stock. It's got to be stock trigger and barrel have to remain the same. You can't change those. You can't polish the trigger. I don't know if that's a thing now. You can lighten and strengthen the trigger by doing the adjustments that are on a trigger, but you can't get in there and open it up and change the mechanics in any way. You can put on a brake or a suppressor. Um, uh, and Obviously the scope is what it is. I don't know that many people can modify a scope, but you can. Rings don't count towards your cost, so your scope mount and your rings are not part of the dollar amount. It's the scope by itself and the rifle by itself.
Fair enough. So simple enough. It has to be a production rifle. It has to be available on the website. And if, for example, if it's
Yeah,
a Ruger, right, and it has to be, let's just say for discussion purposes, let's say the total cost is 4,000, and let's say the rifle's 2,000, the scope's 2,000. Again, I
yeah,
don't
Jim.
know if that's
Yeah,
how it works. This is discussion purposes only. There's the disclaimer. Uh, so if Ruger offers that rifle in 6 Creed, 6.5
308.
Creed, and
Okay,
that's it. Yeah, yeah, 308. Uh, you can't show up to the match and be shooting
that's
a
correct.
Dasher
Well, for two
RPR,
reasons. One,
right?
you
Because
would have had to rebarrel it yourself, and that just broke the rule because the manufacturer has
right,
to rebarrel it. And two, Rigger's not going to put a dasher together. Oh, I
Well,
know. I
it
got
was
you.
an
I got you.
example.
But
Somewhere
no, you're
down.
right. That is 100% correct. That is 100% correct. You cannot show up with a dasher. Hell, you can't show up with a so 6 Creed, 6.5 Creed, 308, 338 Lapua, 300 Win Mag are the five calibers that I know of that are offered in a Ruger. Now, Hornady makes GT. Does Ruger make a GT rifle? Not that I'm aware of. But if they don't show up with a Ruger GT RPR because you will no longer be considered in the production class. Now, with that being said, you can shoot production in this match today, and then next weekend shoot open with another rifle. You don't have to shoot production every single match you go to. Just the match that you are.
Well, it could be
Yes,
the
it can.
same rifle,
Well, see,
right?
here's the even better part is Doug Cohen. Is it Koenig? Well, Doug. If Doug chooses to shoot production and he wins Koenig,
Koenig,
if
I
if
think.
Doug shoots the match and he wins the
Hmm.
match, he's getting the production trophy and the match trophy. And if they've got a pro trophy, he gets that too. Okay, because I believe he's considered a pro by now. Um, I had we shot the Magnolia Meltdown 2 years ago, and my buddy Joseph Araby, his cousin Robbie came and shot with Rob. Araby, he owns Araby Precision down in Thibodaux, Louisiana. But he brought his cousin Robbie, and Robbie shot a 223 gas gun. And guess what? Nobody else shot tack or gas in that match. Robbie finished dead last and took home both trophies. I looked at Shannon. I said, "Hey, Shannon, has anybody ever finished dead last and taken home two trophies?" Said, "Nope, first time for everything." But yeah, Robbie took home two trophies, finishing dead last.
So,
He has more trophies in 2 day matches than I do.
well, shoot gas gun. So gas
Yeah,
gun.
sure.
Let's talk about gas gun. What are the rules
So
for
now
that?
gas gun. Now this is gas gun, not tack. Gas gun only, not tack. So a gas gun is it, whatever caliber you're shooting, shoot it. There's no there's no speed limit. Well, there is a speed limit. They standard 3,200 feet per second for any caliber or any round that you shoot in the PRS. Um, an open class or gas gun cannot exceed 3,200 feet per second. Okay. Now, with the exception of tack, and we'll get to that in a second. On a gas gun, there's no exception to the rule. If you want to shoot a dasher and you can get it to function in a gas gun, bring it, and you can run a gas gun. It just has to be a gas gun, which is a semi-automatic rifle. Um, so a Browning bar is considered a gas gun. Daniel Defense 223 is a gas gun. Um, Hell, Daniel Defense made a GT gas gun. That's considered a gas gun. You finish the highest person with a gas gun, you get the gas gun trophy, and you get 100 points for that match. There's really no outlying rules that only affect gas gun class.
Now that's the key point right there. If you're the
Yep,
highest person with a gas
yep,
gun, you get the trophy. And in that
that's
example you
correct.
gave, there was only one guy, so
Yep,
he was the
that's
highest
correct. And there was
one with
nobody
a
else
gas
shooting
gun.
tack.
Uh, Now
So tax
explain
position.
that one.
Let me do a disclaimer here that I'm just gonna I'm gonna the ballpark on the numbers. I believe 308 is 2,800 feet per second. I believe. You guys can look that up on a 308, and I think the 223 I think is around about the same. Pardon me, I apologize if my numbers are wrong. But there is a speed limit difference in the tactical division. If you sign up as TAC and you're going over the speed limit, then you are shooting open. You are no longer shooting TAC for that match. And It has to be a 308 or a 223. 223, not like an Ackley improved 223. It has to be a 223 5.56 NATO round. And same with the 308 762. Um, it can't be a neck down 308. It can't be a variant. I'm making this up. An Ackley improved 308 has to be a 308 7.62 round. Am I saying that right? 7.6? Yeah, 7.62. With
Okay.
that being said, so you have, in order to, you can run a gas gun, a production gas gun that falls in the production class. You can run a 308 in that gas gun or a 223 in that gas gun, and finish high in all three of those categories and take home all three trophies.
So let's run
Hmm.
about me again. So one of them is
I said
tack. The other
production.
one's gas gun. What was the other one?
So let's say you went and bought a production Daniel
Ah,
Defense
yeah, yeah.
5.56, right? And no one else was shooting the
Right.
match like my buddy Robbie, and he had a production scope on and a production rifle, and he shot the match and he took home dead last, and there was no production shooters. Yeah, he just took home gas, production, and tack all at one swoop.
Do you think
Yes,
there's shooters that shoot?
yes, I do. And so go ahead and ask the question so people know what you're about to say.
I was gonna. Do you think there's shooters that shoot gas gun or tack or production simply because that's
We call
gives them
those
the
trophy
best
hunters.
chance of winning?
Yes, there are people who will
Ah,
shoot a
okay.
match just so they can take home hardware.
Well, they will purposely shoot. A class that is possibly what's the
That's correct.
word? Not
Now,
as hard to
I will
win,
not take away
right?
from a 308 tack
Or
shooter or a 2 for that matter, because shooting tack in a heavy field is difficult to win. You ask Devin Tarrant, who is my AM in 2 years ago. She was my AM or 3 years ago. She's come so far. She's one of the best shooters I know. She's amazing. She's my success story. I tell everybody about her. But she shoots dasher in 2 day matches, and she shoots 308 in 1 day matches. She's big enough you could probably fold her in half and stick her in your pocket. And she carries that 308 like nobody's business. She's a tack driver with it. I think she finished second in tack in the last match. She beat me, and I was shooting dasher. But yes, there are people who will shoot tack for just for the trophy. I mean, there's people out there building gas guns right now because they know people don't shoot gas gun, and they're going to go and take home a trophy.
yeah, well, hey,
Yep,
if the rules allow
that's
it,
absolutely
back
correct.
to if the rules allow it,
Hate game.
what do you
That's
say?
right. You don't like
Don't
it?
hate the player,
Change the
hate the
rules.
game.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So you shoot a dasher. You mentioned a couple of times. Uh, what are the dasher?
Hmm.
John talked about how good the dasher is and how you know
Yeah.
how much it wins. Do you think it's the dasher, or you think the just the top shooters all
So,
pick the dasher? I don't know
yeah, which
which
came
came
first, the
first,
dasher or
the
the wing?
chicken or the egg type of thing.
So I honestly, so I shoot the dasher because of the low recoil, and it's easier to spot misses, easier to spot hits. I got out and I shot my 308 at 400 yards, and I see that it's the same thing. Uh, you, there is something to be said about the recoil in a dasher. Yes, it does give you an advantage over heavier hitting calibers. But when you shoot enough and you learn how to control the recoil, I think you take Morgan King, for example. Last year at the MPA spring match, he beat everybody's brakes off with a 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, 6.5 Creedmoor hits just slightly less than a 308. Okay, and the dasher guys were getting their stuff pushed all around the place and couldn't beat him. But Morgan King knows how to control recoil. And I'll say the same thing about Morgan. And I'll say the same about Brian Allen, Morgan King, Austin Orgain, freaking uh, hell, Jeff Gurry, all those guys, Ben Gossett. You give them a lever action 30-30 and a toilet paper roll, and they're going to beat half the field. Because it's not the gun, it's not the caliber that makes them good. They're damn good shooters. That's just what it boils down to. Um, you know, they make comments like this scope, it won more matches last year. Well, because of the person who was shooting the gun. Okay, but it's like Jordans, Air Jordans. Everyone wanted to be Michael Jordan. Everyone wanted the shoes because it's got to be the shoes, right? No, it's because Jordan was the greatest basketball player to ever walk on this earth. He isn't good because of his
Yeah,
sneakers. He's good because he's a good basketball player. Same thing with the shooters in our sport. They're good because they put the time in and become better shooters. You look at what's his name. I'll go back to Brian Allen. Brian Allen, I remember there was a stretch of time when he didn't enter a match that he didn't win. There was a time where I think it was my second or third year shooting that every one day he entered, he won. It's because he's a good shooter. So there's people out there that.
Yeah,
So I,
yeah.
I tell people that, there's I said there's three types of people in our sport. It also pertains to the people who their talent level. There's people who are gifted and can shoot well, but they grind and they get better. There are people who I like to call people who are trying to buy points, and they'll go buy the latest and greatest, and they'll chase calibers, and they'll say, "Oh, well, Morgan King, he won the match with a 6.5 Creedmoor. I got to get me a 6.5 Creedmoor." No, you don't. You need to stick with what you got and get better. They'll try to buy their way up the leaderboard, and there's something to be said. You can buy a certain amount of points by using certain gear, and we discussed that with the production rifle versus custom rifle. And I remember you talked to John about that when you talked about building a rifle and changing components from ground up, and then improving that on paper. And there's something to be said to that. But as a whole, and match by match, you can only buy so many points with gear. It all boils down to if you're a good or a bad shooter. And then there's people who try to grind and become a better shooter on their own, and there's people who go and get formal training and become better shooters. And I'm not going to say they shortcutted it at all, by no means. But like me, I have no formal training in shooting other than the Marine Corps. Everything I've learned, I'm not going to say I learned on my own. People like Ryan Hansen and Brian Allen, Chad Heckler, which, by God, I mean, if it wasn't for Chad, I don't know that I'd finish as good as I did on day one of the college match last year. And he's all about the mental game. And I finished day one in ninth place at the college match last year. But Chad Heckler, Ryan Hansen, Shad Kimbrell, Brian Allen, just to drop names. Those guys have made me the shooter I am by proxy. Ryan Hansen, I had the aha moment when I took his win class, and I realized what I was doing, and I understood why I have to hold 5/10 left of center at 1,000 yards to start with. I learned why when I shot a long range mark, step it out. I'm hitting 800, boom, 900, boom, 1,000, boom. No, I'm off the right. What's going on? No, it's spindrift. Or maybe there's some wind that I didn't see there. People always say, "Oh, I'm hitting the center of the target. What happened? What happened?" I don't know. Maybe you didn't hold more wind, because your wind increases as distance goes. And I learned that, and Ryan taught me that. But as money out of my pocket and learning from a formal class, I have none of that. It's all been grassroots and taught by people in passing.
Well, I call it hardware and software, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's so eager to buy hardware, but the
Yes, sir.
software, you got to update that software too, man.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
Well,
can't use
I
that
talked
hardware.
to Shannon Kay at the last one day match at his place, and Shannon, what do I got to do, man? I feel like I'm at a plateau, and it's starting to weigh on me. I can't get any better. I said I want to come take a class, but I don't know what to take. He said, you need to train with people. Don't go out and try to fix it, because you're not going to fix it on your own, because there's no one there to tell you what you're doing wrong. You're training a certain way, and over time you're training this way, and you're not getting any better. Well, maybe you need to have someone watch you. Maybe you need to go find somebody to do some one-on-one training. Maybe that'll help. But training by yourself and doing the same thing over and over and over again is not the recipe for success. I think at some point, if you hit that plateau like I am, you got to find somebody who's willing to take the time to either go train with you, or watch you and tell you what you're doing wrong. You're slapping the trigger, Joey. Why don't you slap the trigger? Oh, well, crap. I need to fix that. Okay, I didn't know I was doing that. Okay, well, there's 5 points that I hit more on my next stage, on my next match. I think there's a lot to be said for one-on-one training with somebody.
I just had an idea. I'm going to start a shooting class. I'm going to
All right,
start a
let's hear
shooting
it.
school. No, hear me out. Hear me out. I'm going to start a shooting school. Okay? And when they show up, I'm going to teach them nothing about form or natural point of aim or anything. All I'm going to do is suggest that they get a better rifle, a better scope, change the cartridge, and I guarantee you, I'm going to be booked for months, because now they're going to have a they're going to have somebody tell them that there's their scopes needs to be upgraded,
That's
right?
right.
And who doesn't want to hear that? Who doesn't want
Well, tell them to buy a Collis.
who
There's
doesn't
nothing
want
better.
that? All right,
Okay.
this my idea.
Nobody take that
My
idea.
idea. Okay, nobody take
Well,
that.
I'll tell you. The
Anyway,
when I was training with Devin, always use an example. If you had Devin and I stand next to each other, you'll see that she's like 5, even maybe 4'11", somewhere around there. She's really tiny. She's real small, real short. Her gun is almost as tall as she is. I'm 6'3". Okay, you see the two of us standing next to each other. I had to adapt everything I do when I was teaching her to shoot because I can palm my freaking bag, grab my gun, and I can go to a stage and go to town. She can't do that. I mean, not because she's not strong enough, but her hands won't do that. You know. So I always told her, I said, let's start with the fundamentals. Let's work on those, and then let's ever adapt everything to what you can do. And 'cause I think everything's got to have a starting point with her, is just figuring out what she could do physically because of her size. But hey, it must have worked because she's been rocking and rolling ever since.
that's cool, man. It's cool when you
Yeah,
teach somebody and then they just go kill it.
yeah, yeah. The
That's
day she
awesome.
beat me, I will tell you this, and it may sound like sour grapes, is when we're both on our game and shooting really good, she ain't beat me yet, but she has finished ahead of me multiple times,
Uh
and
oh.
I'm proud. And
Wait a minute, but you can't use that. You can't use that because then you
I
can
know.
always just
I
say
actually,
that forever.
I actually,
You can always just claim, "Oh well,
I actually had this
I wasn't on my game."
fair and square,
I think if she beat you,
fair and square.
here, I think if she beat you, she beat you. You should have been on.
You know
You should
what?
have been
You know
on
what?
your best game always. If you
Exactly. I
weren't,
had this exact
don't show up.
conversation this weekend with a shooter. He said, "Oh, I missed those shots because my muzzle brake came loose." I said, "Whose responsibility is that?" He said, "Man, I said, hey, look, I'm sorry your muzzle brake came loose, but whose responsibility is to make sure it's tightened?" Okay, and that's same thing with what I just said. Yes, Devin has beaten me fair and square. She has, and as a teacher and instructor, you can find more love and value out of seeing your students finish ahead of you than in winning sometimes. And seeing her win, it's a different
Oh,
type of love and value than it is when you win. When you win, yeah, it feels great. When you see your pupil, you see your student win and beat you, man, dude. Last year when I finished second place at that freaking, I didn't just beat Brian Allen. I beat Brian and Bradley and Christine, all three of the Allens. And while it felt good to see that happen and that happen, I'm not saying this to talk smack, and Brian knows that because I've had this conversation with him. But to beat your mentor, it's like, what's next, you know? And it felt good, and I'm sure he's got a picture of me because he got the old man trophy, and I got my second post trophy, and we took a picture together. So, but no, I told the guy that his brake came loose. I told him, I said, at the end of the day, no matter what you say, if you get a 0 on a stage, you don't shoot well at a match. No matter what you say, it's going to be an excuse. You stepped into the plate, you took a swing, you're playing the game. It's on you whether you do well or not. And Devin finishes ahead of me, she beats me, and and I won't shy away from that. But I will give her shit and tell her. I will tell her
I agree.
that I wasn't shooting my game, and I'll find every excuse I can give her. Uh, but she beat me. Yeah,
Anyway, man, this has been great. I
absolutely.
appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I always enjoy talking and hearing the different point of views, and this has been entertaining for sure. Um,
Okay.
Nomination time.
Oh
I have a
yeah.
pretty good
You
idea.
want to guess who I'm going to nominate?
How do you spell
All
Brian?
right. So like John did. He had two. I'm also going to give you two, but one of them is a couple. You have to do them together. Okay. All right. So obviously Brian
Okay.
Allen. He's he's the father figure that obviously I love my dad, but he's the father figure. He's a good dude. He's my best friend. So the other two is Rick Scribbins and Corey Adamski. Okay, those two are also two of my best friends. So, but if you do so GCP is the company that Rick owns, um, and he's the gunsmith for GCP Rifle Company, and yeah, Corey might as well own it with him because hell, you think of GCP, you don't think of just Rick, you think of Rick and Corey, and so that's why I say if you're going to interview one, you got to do them together, and they're great dudes, best friends of mine, and Brian Allen.
All right. Well, help me get in touch with them, and you know the rule. Once you've been nominated, you cannot turn it down. It's a rule I made up,
Yeah.
but it's been working. Dude, this is how I get to talk to people that I would never have
Yeah.
gotten the chance to talk to, right? Just like John. He's like, you got to
Well,
talk to Joey. Okay, cool.
well,
Here
one of
we
the
are.
reasons I
And it's
didn't
been
nominate
fun.
Tom Fuller is because he already did, and Tom Fuller is,
Yeah.
dude. If you get him on, you got to do it live so people can ask questions. Because that guy, he's just a bear you want to poke with questions. And I love Tom Fuller. He's such an amazing human being. Um, uh, I went down there for the Armageddon experience, and I can't tell you how much fun I had just becoming part of the Armageddon family. They're amazing. But yeah, so I guess that's it. But if you ever make it out this way, man, you be my guest. I'll get you to whatever match you want to shoot. All right, take care, man. Good
All right,
talking with
man.
you. Bye
Good
bye.
deal. Thank you.